Welcome back to the Milwaukee Market Update, where we break down what's actually happening in the Milwaukee real estate market. And today's big question: what is a house hack, and how can I get started with buying one in Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
Yeah, Ty, what is a house hack is a great question. I know you are super passionate about it. I am super passionate about it. I'm not going to ruin or spoil anything. You're going to have to listen for probably 30 more seconds to find out. But today we're diving into all about house hacking, how it can change your net worth, change your life. And you can also understand if you're a good fit for someone that may want a house hack as well.
Definitely, because let's be honest, there's a lot of noise out there that could certainly stop you from wanting to do the house hack. Every day it's is the market crashing? Is now the worst time to buy? Is housing about to explode again? We're here to cut through all the headlines and give you the real story about what's happening in Milwaukee, specifically around house hacking and is it still viable today?
Exactly. Because whether you're thinking about buying, selling, house hacking, investing, or just trying to understand what's going on with housing here, we break it down in a way that actually makes sense for you. If you're new to the show, you're a return listener, please, please, please take a second to hit subscribe. It helps us to reach more people that may also find value in what we're talking about here. And then also find us on Instagram at Horizon Homes MKE or online homewithhorizon.com.
All right, let's get into it.
Let's go. Ty, what is going on, man? Another week, another podcast. We're here, dude. How you doing today?
Excellent. No complaints here. It's been a little toasty, a little smoky here in the Milwaukee area. For those that are following, it's July 22nd last week. It was a little smoky from the Canadian fires, but overall pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. And now all of a sudden it's like kind of chilly.
Yeah, it's
And
perfect.
now I'm like, I wish it was 90 degrees out again.
Yep. I don't know. It's something about like 70 to 75 degrees and sunny is just about perfect. Got the window open behind me. Maybe some birds chirping in the background.
Yeah, you are a big fall weather guy though. Like
Mhm.
I think your ideal temp is like 60 and you're in maybe like 55. You're in a t-shirt and shorts
No,
and your
sweatshirt
flip
and shorts.
flops.
That's ideal. T-shirt, sweatshirt, shorts, in heaven. Little fire going.
Yeah.
Wool socks.
You got the what are they called? The flannel lined pants.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. But
Yeah.
outside of our wardrobes and our favorite weather, we've got a fun one here. Like we said in the intro, house hacking 101. Some of you are gonna be like, okay, great. I've been looking for this episode. I know exactly what that is. Other people are like, what the heck is a house hack? What are you saying here? So we're gonna go through what is a house hack, what are the good things, the bad things, everything we said in the intro. But
Yeah, I
let's
love it. Ty, I'm very excited about this episode because this is something that I know you're really passionate about. It's something
definitely.
I'm really passionate about. And real quick, what a house hack is, the term to me is kind of cheesy, but it's basically you buy a house or you buy a multifamily property that you live in, and then you rent out some portion of it. For a duplex, it's pretty straightforward. You live in one unit, rent out the other. It could be a single family, and you rent out other bedrooms to your friends. But any combination of that is a house hack. It's basically a way to own or occupy a property and then have someone else coming in there to pay rent to help offset your cost of living is the easiest way to say, and that's exactly what house hacking is. And I love this strategy. Ty, I know you've done it how many times?
4 times.
I think you might be the house hacking king of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I've done it twice, and it is something that I think is a phenomenal way, whether you want to be a big time investor or whether you just want to buy one home and that's it. I think it fits a lot of people, and it's really no different than just owning a home is kind of the beauty of it too if you're going the duplex route. And so I'm pumped to talk about this with you today.
Yeah. I think the additional thing I want to add on to the what is this, and like, we mentioned the types of house hacks here. Like, I kind of want to just very quickly at the beginning of the episode, before we get way into the trenches of like, what is the actual hack here? And there's two things I just want to hit on them here. We'll probably go into more detail later, but there's really, I think, two core hacks to the house hack. One is lowering your cost of living. The old house hack of 2015 used to be, yeah, you can buy a property and live for free because of the good interest rates. Now it's, can you live for equal or less than what it would cost to rent that same unit? So you have a cost of living advantage. The second hack is if you think that real estate investing is in your future, the low down payment that you can do because you're owner occupying, living in this property. That's the second hack is you could essentially do a 20% lower down payment instead of doing 25% down, you can do 5% down for the purchase. I just want to hit on those two main concepts here of it's you're living in a property, you're renting out a space, and the two main hacks are the cost of living and lower down payment so you can get started earlier.
Yeah, great. Where do you want to start on this, man? Where do you want to start? Do you want to talk maybe about your story real quick of just house hacking? I'll talk about my story real quick, just to kind of talk about why
Yeah,
we
let's
did it.
talk about the good old days and why we did it. So yeah, the origin story for me is I was familiar with the idea of real estate investing because my parents had a couple duplexes back in Iowa. And then, I got introduced to Bigger Pockets, which is another great podcast. If this content intrigues you, that's another good podcast for you guys to follow. So a little shout out there. And essentially that was one of the methods they talked about for getting started was this house hack strategy. So we dove into it, started looking at and analyzing deals for a house hack, ended up finding one in Brewers Hill here in the Milwaukee area, just outside of downtown that we really loved. And why we ended up doing it, why it was a great deal, is it was a $330,000 duplex, had a really big upper unit, a pretty normal size 2-bed, 1-bath lower unit. Me and three other people lived in the upper unit. And essentially, our cost of living was only about $250 per person to live in this 3-bed, 2-bath unit. And our down payment was only $10,000. So obviously, there's other costs that go into buying a property outside of that, but it just seemed like such a no-brainer at the time at the 3.5% interest rates that we had then of I'm going to literally be having a monthly rent payment in quotes of per month I'm going to pay $250 and I only had to use a little bit of my savings to get into the door. That was my personal experience of dipping my toe into this. And we're obviously going to talk about it. It's not that easy, but
Mhm.
it felt like it was the easiest decision ever. And it's been a good decision, 8 years later now.
Yeah. And I think what's so cool, Ty and I kind of had this full circle moment, but I was over at your duplex. This was maybe, I don't know, the first year after you bought it because we had a mutual friend at the time. And we still have that mutual friend. But that's why I was over there. And I saw you and our other friend there. You guys were talking about this. And I'm like, man, I gotta get into this. This seems too good to be true. And I bought mine first one in 2020, lived in the lower unit, rented the upper unit. Um, Shortly after that, bought a second one, and I'm doing the exact same, living upstairs, renting out the lower, and then now that first one I have is completely rented out. Um, and it feels almost too easy, is kind of the thing where it feels like it should be harder. I think it's a great way for someone that is considering becoming a real estate owner to dip their toes into it. Um, should we talk maybe about the persona of the kind of person that fits house hacking and maybe
Yeah.
one that doesn't? Or should we talk the benefits? Where do you want to go here, Ty? We got a lot we could kind of dive into on
I
this.
think we start out with the persona, but then also maybe some of the myths. I think would be a good thing to talk about because I think that's what stops most people from considering this as an option. So I think the person that's going to be a good fit for the house hack is somebody who's already renting today because you're probably already renting a duplex. You're probably already living in an apartment and sharing walls with other people. And that's one of the biggest myths or the biggest, hurdles I hear people say is oh, I just don't know. I don't want to live that close to somebody else. I don't want to have to share my space. What if it's a bad tenant? And it's the flip for me. It's you actually have way more control of who lives with you. You get to do the lease, you get to do the background checking. Those are actually benefits, not the negatives. So I think that's going to be the persona is going to be somebody who's already renting and spending money, or they're trying to get out of their parents' basement and actually get some of their independence. And I think the other persona where this works really good for in today's current market here in 2026 with 6 to 7% interest rates is if you wanted to buy a single family typical home in Wauwatosa, you're looking at a $3,500 plus monthly payment, or you could house hack and probably get that payment down to like $1,800 and still get a 2 bed or 3 bed in the best area of Tosa. You're just using a little bit of leverage of other people to rent out your spaces in order to live in that really great neighborhood. So that's like
Yeah.
the persona is somebody who's like willing to learn and educate themselves on like what's reality, not like what's the surface level, oh, I'm afraid of this.
Yeah. I think with you're owning a rental property too. And so you need to be someone I think too that has like I can figure this out sort of attitude. When you compare a duplex to a single family home, there's not a lot that's really different. Like I think what I hear a lot of times from people that are considering buying a duplex to house hack, it's a lot of times it's the parents that are a little bit like, "Oh, this is super risky." Like,
Mhm.
"Oh, why would you ever want this? You're going to be unclogging toilets at 2 a.m. in the morning."
It's always the
And
toilets.
it's always the toilets. Always the freaking toilets. And when you compare a duplex to a single family home, you still need to take care of it. You know, you
You
still
still have to
need
unclog
to
toilets.
unclog toilets. You still need to make sure that the home is in good shape. It's kind of like owning a car. You do scheduled maintenance on your car. Your home is the exact same thing. And a duplex to a single family home are generally the same size. You have an extra furnace, you have an extra water heater, an extra electrical panel. But besides that, it's kind of like the same. The only variable is you now have a tenant. It is like the one variable. And there's a lot of control that you can do as far as making sure you get a high quality tenant in there. And we can maybe talk more about that in this episode, but it's it's a lot different than I think what historically people have been taught to do, which is to go to college, get a job, buy a home, and that's just the peanut butter jelly, saving your 401k, retire. And that's what we're used to, and you follow that and it's normal. All of a sudden you insert into buying a duplex, and some people start thinking it's really risky. Why am I doing this? This is going to be a huge problem for me. When I think about in your worst case scenario, you have a situation that happens where you own a home, you lose your job, or a life event happens where you can't make money or something like that. Like you have now this home that you are solely responsible for paying your mortgage on. You can sell the home. If you have a duplex, something happens to you, you have at least someone else that is helping you to offset your cost of living. Maybe that means you move out and you can rent out your unit and then you're in a really good spot. You also can sell it too. But I think a duplex, your risk is lower from like a cash flow perspective, from a life quality perspective, in my opinion. And I think that's one of the myths that I hear a lot too is that it's risky because it's a duplex, because it's a rental property. And I think the opposite is true. It's riskier, in my opinion, buying a single family home. And a lot of people understand the benefits of single family home ownership, from building a net worth, from instead of paying my landlord, I want to pay myself. And you look at someone's net worth over the history of them owning their home at year 10, 20, 30, as that home goes up, as that equity is paid off, you've got a phenomenal piggy bank right there with your single family home. With a duplex, it's almost accelerated because you now are not paying that full equity amount every month. You're paying half of it, your tenant's paying half of it. It's like a cheat code for savings and putting that money into that piggy bank and putting less of your own money in there. And
It's almost a hack, some might
it,
say.
it's like hacking a house. The
Yeah.
name is, I think the name is super cheesy, but then when I was
Yes.
like, okay, like it actually makes a lot of sense, like a house hack method. Um, and we also talked to about how it doesn't take a lot of properties to change your life. Like
Mhm.
to me, kind of the magic number, depending on when you buy, is around two or three. Where if you could have two or three good, stable properties that you have completely paid off, sure, that takes 30 years or you can shorten that. But let's say you pay it off over 30 years, that property is free and clear. You can buy that house hack, pay it off, buy your single family home. By the time you retire or around there, that asset's gone up in value, rents have gone up, you now have no mortgage, and that is an annuity essentially as part of your retirement. That's passive cash flow that's coming in, and that
And
asset has now
you
grown
you
in
know I
value
can't go an
too.
episode without pulling up a spreadsheet or talking about some numbers, which I'll hit on in a second. But I think one thing I want to hit on as you kind of talk to wrap up this persona thing, a lot of people think there's like a one size fits all way to house hack, and I think it's more of a spectrum. So when, I described my first duplex, we had a 3 bedroom, 2 bath unit, and we had 4 people total living in it. Some people might call that uncomfortable because it's 2 couples living inside one unit. It's like, oh, I don't want to share my space with somebody else. But like the more uncomfortable you're willing to be, the cheaper your rent is. And you could see that in my example where like literally we were paying $250 a month when accounting for all 4 of us splitting our unit, which was the outstanding amount after the renter in the other unit was also covering off a big portion of our mortgage. So, like the more people that you put in that building following your local municipality rules allows you to live for cheaper. The other end of the spectrum would be like the luxury house hack, which was what my wife and I's last house hack in Shorewood was. We want to live in X location, and rather than spend a big amount of money on a single family home and a big mortgage, let's live in where we want to live and buy a duplex. And it ended up being more than half as much to live in the area we wanted to for a few years by using a duplex. But that was like $1,800 a month for our house hack out of pocket versus $250 for our first one. And that's normal to go from when we were 25 when we bought our first to when we were 30, 31 when we bought our last. Like
Mhm.
there is a spectrum, and that's a personas. You can actually flex this, but I can always tell you it's going to be more affordable to live in a duplex than it would be to live in a single family home. Maybe not as cheap as living inside of your parents' basement. Living in your parents' basement is a house hack. You're just the hacky, meaning they're using you probably to, maybe you're paying some rent, maybe you're paying some money towards their grocery bill. Like you are the one that's being hacked in that
Mhm.
situation. What I want to show from what you said though, to circle back on your topic, Nick, of you use the annuity approach of, hey, after 30 years, what is this actually going to look like? And this is a tool that I use with all of my clients. I know it's a huge, lots of numbers on a spreadsheet, but I'm just going to call it like really the core numbers that actually matter on this. The typical house hack you can buy today is about 365,000. Let's say you're 25 years old when you buy it. With 5% down, that's about $18,000 down payment. So that's your investment into the deal. Each year, it's going to go up about 3% in value. Each year, especially once you move out, your tenant is buying this property for you or paying down this loan for you. And you have negative cash flow. Like this is not a cash flow strategy. But as you go through into the future, and I go all the way out to 30 years later, when you're 55 years old, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, you go from year 29, where your rents have gone up and you're getting $30,000 of your cash flow because you've kept it for 30 years. But what happens in year 30 with a 30-year fixed mortgage, which we'll get into some financing types here in a second? Now your mortgage payment's gone, and that cash flow went from $30,000 a year to $65,000 a year. So, one decision that you made when you're 25 years old to buy a $365,000 duplex is now worth $885,000 and pays you $65,000 a year after operating expenses, taxes, and insurance. That's the thing that's amazing. That one duplex, I would say, is amazing. You just double these numbers for your second duplex, and now you've got something really amazing of a six-figure income and well over $1 million net worth. Even if you just wanted to cash in, you're going to be sitting pretty with 2 duplexes here.
Yeah, and that's what excites me is the short-term benefits of your living more affordably, you're building equity, and then those long-term benefits of net worth gains, retirement benefits, and also just the optionality of it too. Like if you don't want to live there anymore, you can put a tenant in there. If you want to sell it, the duplex market here is very strong as well. There's so much options for it. That is one thing I love as well here too. Um, what's someone that maybe wouldn't be a good fit for a house hack, would you say?
Gosh, I don't know. I would say I think everybody should do it, even if they only do it for their single family home, which we mentioned as an option. It's like that's a good thing. If you can just be uncomfortable for a year or two and you've got that $2,500, $3,000 mortgage payment, have a roommate for a couple years and like cut your monthly payment in half, or go find yourself a nice significant other to split the bill with. Another good form of house hacking. I have a hard time, like you said, I'm super passionate about the house hack,
Yeah.
so I literally think it's perfect for everyone, at least for their first purchase, and especially in the duplex capital of the world here in Milwaukee, where their duplexes are infinite, it feels like. I just think that everyone should get a piece of this pie. So I'll let you talk about the person who you think. I know you're going to probably go into the person who doesn't want to do maintenance, but I feel like that's the person who also shouldn't buy a single family home either.
I think there's maybe a finite window of someone's life when this works.
Hmm.
Kind of the person that we see generally that fits this is someone that is buying their first home, buying their second home. They're typically in an age where they're maybe single or maybe have a spouse or maybe married, maybe have kids, but typically don't. I
Yeah.
kind of see that's like the general type of person that is doing this. They're financially savvy. They've done a lot of research. They've done a lot of time to understand what this looks like. I know personally for me, like I'm 32 years old. When it's time for us to start having a family, start having kids, we're going to want more space. We're going to want a bigger yard. By the time we have three kids, Ashley, my fiance, is going to be like, we can't be in a duplex anymore. And I think we're kind of getting there too. So I think there's certain lifestyle things that this doesn't fit for. There's a couple like luxury duplexes in Shorewood I've seen that are side by sides that are 3 bed, 1.5 bath. And I think that could maybe fit that persona of you have a family and
Yeah.
you have several kids and that could work. But I do think there's kind of like a lifestyle choice you're making, but there's also really good options for duplexes in Milwaukee as well too that I think can kind of change that. But it's got to be something that you and if you have a partner, if you have kids, are willing to do. And but I think that's also why some people love the single family space is because you have typically a garage, you can get a bigger yard, a bigger home, it's yours. So there's some things there that it doesn't fit all the time. You are also like you're a landlord. You know, if you
Mhm.
have a separate unit that is being rented out, you need to be sure that you're like, I can fill out a lease. I have some understanding of tenant laws. You need to, I think, know that not every day is going to be a good day. And I think the same goes with homeownership too. But I always talk about this with any client I work with, specifically investors, that if there's 365 days a year, 360 of those days are going to be really good days. Of those
Gonna
remaining
forget you even
five, you're going
have
to
it.
have
Yeah.
3 days where you're going to be like, okay, yeah, my air conditioning went out. Okay. And then you're probably going to have 2 days where you're like, this sucks. And that's,
Mhm.
I think, probably the same with home ownership as it is with an investment property. Maybe the investment property, 2 days that are really bad could be a lot worse. But if you can stomach those 2 to 5 days of year of like not everything is going to go right, then I think you'll be okay. That's something else to consider too. Is like you are a landlord, you are in charge of that building, maintaining that building, making sure your tenants are enjoying themselves. It's a service you're providing to someone else, and that's not something to be taken lightly. But I do think that I mean, we've got lease forms, we've got things like that, and we can kind of help clients with that as well too.
Yeah, definitely.
When okay, so someone comes to you, Ty, and they say, "Hey, I want a house hack." You get excited. You're like, "Oh yes, of course! Like you
Amazing.
should." What are maybe the things that you're coaching them on, and like, what are some things that you try to advise them on as far as what's important when finding a house hack?
Mhm.
What are you kind of looking at? Do the numbers matter? Do the numbers not matter? Like, where do you kind of take that person as far as next steps from there?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite parts because I've got two things I'd say. And one of it is you're not only a first time home buyer typically, but you're also usually learning about how to invest. So there's actually like an extra level of education we have to go through. And that house hacker education, I kind of have like three pillars or three steps to house hack, which is the first one is you want to buy a property that you're excited to live in for at least a year because when you do an owner occupant loan, you do have to intend to live there for a year. So I think location, location, location is a good real estate rule of thumb, but you're also going to be using this as your home. So I think that's rule one. Rule number two of house hacking and some of the education behind it is you want your house hack out of pocket, which is your mortgage amount and your monthly payment minus how much rent you collect, whether from the other unit or if you have other renters or tenants inside of your own unit. You want that to be equal or less than what it would cost for you to rent that unit yourself. So that's like your rule of thumb too, is are we going to get that like lifestyle or the living expense savings? Rule number 3, how close can you get it to be break even with cash flow when you move out of the property? Because you do have to keep the property and then you do have to keep on paying the mortgage. House hacking is not a cash flow strategy. It is a net worth building strategy. So you need to make sure that you're doing a little bit of math and underwriting. Like that's what we say of, how do you make the decision to make to pull the trigger or not? You have to make sure that that third rule isn't going to sink your ship because you can't afford the payments once you move out and maybe you buy your next single family home. So like where you live, make sure that it's helping you get that cost of living benefit, and make sure it's not going to be bleeding you dry once you move out. Those are the 3 rules of house hacking.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I have very similar philosophy. I think probably, and also like there are numbers and analysis that go into a house hack, at least for most of the clients that I work with. Because a lot of them that buy a house hack, it's a means to then buy a second, it's a means to then buy a third. And they view this as a way to acquire properties with low down payment because you can do 5% down versus 20% down because it's a primary home that you're living in. So it's how do we do this where it makes sense when I move out? Um, I also think that it's got to be a place you like living, has to be number one. And we talk about this. I don't know if we've talked about it here, but the more affordable the price, the cheaper the price, the better your cash flow looks. The higher the price, the worse your cash flow looks. That's like just plain simple.
Just the way it
And the
is.
location that you're looking at determines what the price is of your property. If you're looking in Shorewood versus if you're looking in an area that you might not feel comfortable living in, those prices are going to be a lot different. And so the cash flow is important, but your quality of life while you're living there is really important as well too. One thing that I wish I did less of when I was looking for house hacks was I was very much only focused on the spreadsheet and
Mm-hmm.
what's my cash flow when I move out. And that's like all I cared about. And if I could go back and tell my 25-year-old self to do it differently, I would have said, "Hey, go and see more properties and only care about ones that are in good condition, locations you believe in, because you're going to own this for 30 years. Nick, as long as you're not being bled dry once you move out, focus more on building condition, building quality, in a location you believe in." Because I think that's the secret to investing. The investors that I know that have seen massive success is the cash flows there, but they're buying in good locations and they're buying good buildings, and the net worth gains you gain from that property going up in value year over year is always going to outweigh your cash flow gains 9 times out of 10. But you got to be able to ride that cash flow. You got to be able to pay that. And so if all of a sudden you move out and you're negative $3,000 a month, which would be kind of hard to do, I think, but like, can you pay that? It's also interesting, I think, too, because the mindset of being negative cash flow on a duplex is different than if you're just paying that same negative amount into the stock market every month. But like in my mind, they're like almost kind of sort of the same.
Definitely.
If you put 2 grand a month into the stock market, you don't view that as I'm negative 2 grand cash flow every month because that 2 grand is going right into an asset. But if you're negative cash flow on your duplex, you view that as I'm losing money every month, but you're still putting that mortgage amount into an asset every month. And sure, as the start of the mortgage is, it's mostly interest and as it goes on. But that's like, I think just one thing to kind of rewire your brain on is you got to be able to stomach that negative cash flow. But, and maybe this is too in the weeds for a house hack episode, but I just think it's important to realize that negative cash flow is you're still probably putting more into an asset than what most people are in the US. So, and also if you have a mortgage and you're paying 3 grand a month on your mortgage, you also don't view that as negative cash flow. You view like, oh, that's good. Like I'm putting this into something. So like just
Yep.
some thoughts here as you're kind of running numbers and thinking about things here as well too.
Yeah, definitely. I think the making sure why rule number 1 is picking a place that you like is because all of the benefits of house hacking come in the future of like buying something that you want to keep for the long run. Just like we're taught in stocks, like you said, is you want to be a long-term buy and hold investor for stocks. It's the same thing for real estate. Almost all of the benefits come later because of the cost to acquire and the interest being all front loaded. All the benefits come later, but you have to make sure the math. So it's mostly emotional and like my why. I know we're big, like, what is your why behind investing so you can stick to it for the long run, but making sure the math isn't really ugly so that you can also keep it for the long run.
Yep.
So I think those two things are really important. It's more of a 50-50 than you'd think, than hey, I need to make sure the numbers are good. And then if I kind of like it, that's just a cherry on top. I really think it starts with I like the place
Mhm.
and the numbers are satisfactory. And most of the time I'd say like to kind of wrap out that like rule number 3 of making sure you're as close to break even as possible on your post move out of your duplex cash flow. Usually the number I'm targeting is like less than $600 because generally speaking, a lot of people that get interested in house hacking know what a Roth IRA is, which I think like the max you can put into that per year is like $6,000 or $7,000 per year. I essentially just say, hey, instead of you doing this thing that everybody talks about and loves of your Roth IRA, like just lower your contributions to that after tax investment vehicle, and instead you're saving up for those rainy days and those repairs, because the negative cash flow isn't like you hemorrhaging money every month. It's the water heater breaks, it's the AC unit goes out, so you're actually investing into the physical property, and those are also tax write-offs without going too in the weeds. Like most of the time those are actually like showing that you made no money when you actually did make money that year. Again, real estate is a fickle thing, but
Yeah.
it's not like you're
Um,
just hemorrhaging money and it's just like going into the ether. It's actually going and being reinvested into making your property a better asset.
yeah. Um, One thing that's really cool about Milwaukee too is if you're thinking about house hacking here, there are duplex options at just about every neighborhood type that you could imagine. And you talked about Milwaukee being the duplex capital of the world. Per capita, there's more duplexes in the Milwaukee area than any other city in the United States. And we have duplexes that are $1 million. We have duplexes that are $100,000 and anything and anywhere in between of all types of neighborhoods. So one thing that I love about the Milwaukee market too is you have options, you have neighborhoods to choose from, and you can kind of decide like, hey, this is the neighborhood I really like, and this is where I want to be based off my budget, based off what is important to me in my location. And that's something that's really cool. You're not stuck to having to be in this one neighborhood because it's the only place where duplexes are. You have almost too many options, which is a really nice thing about the city here too.
Yeah, totally agree. It's the perfect way to get like why we have some of those like lower price point neighborhoods is honestly they're a little bit more ran down. Everyone knows the more owner occupancy or like homeowners you have in a neighborhood, the better they take care of their property, their curb appeal. That means more people want to move there and pay higher prices for it. I think it's just a good thing for communities in general to encourage house hacking. And honestly, like in a lot of these neighborhoods where you can get $150,000 duplex, you will be probably living for free. Versus if you're renting in a duplex in the neighborhood already, your rents are probably $1,500 a month. This like spread between the two is so insane, but there's just a lack of education around
Mhm.
like what it is and how to do it, and is this even something that I could do? Because the same thing impacts single family home buyers of, oh, I thought I had to do 20% down because my parents always said PMI, private mortgage insurance, is evil. That same message gets passed around everywhere, including people not knowing that you can do a low down payment for an investment property because you get to live in it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, what else, man?
I think the what else? I think other people, this would be like again, a lot of times you get one significant other if it is a couple that's super gung ho, and the other one that's like, I don't know about this. I think one of the main concerns I hear people talk about of like concerns is, well, if I spend my money and my budget, my pre-approval on buying a duplex, I won't be able to buy my dream home. And I think that's something that's really important to hit on to like educate your partner on of, oh my gosh, if I buy this like duplex that I'm not super in love with, but I like the area, but I want to eventually move out to Whitefish Bay or Mequon or Brookfield, isn't this going to hurt my ability to buy that next home? And the answer generally is no. And the reason why is because you've bought, let's say, a property that has a $3,500 mortgage, monthly payment on it. Well, if you're collecting, $1,800 a month in rent from both sides, more or less, without going too into the weeds, when you have a lease on each side, it washes out the debt impact on your ability to purchase another property in the future. So there's a little bit of executional stuff that you have to do and timing to make that happen. But that's the crazy thing is you now have this potentially $400,000 property, and a future lender where you go to buy your next home is going to treat it as if it doesn't even exist. And you've essentially replenished your budget to go buy that future beautiful home that you want to live in. And if you've house hacked for long enough and actually have income coming in from it, you might even be able to buy more of a home because you've
Yeah.
generated another income source. So I think that's one of the things I like have to hit on that people get concerned. It's like, oh my gosh, what if I want to buy a second one? What do I do then? Or what if I want to buy my future dream home? Is this going to slow me down on the journey? And I'd say, no, it doesn't. There's just some things that we have to tactically do along the way.
Yeah. Yep. Um, I had something else to add here. Oh, a couple like things to look out for when it comes to duplexes when you're looking at purchasing one or a house hack. It's kind of a lot of the same of a single family. Like when Ty and I bring buyers through homes, we're looking at what kind of expenses are you going to have over the next 5 to 10 years, what's been updated, what hasn't been updated. And the same rule applies for duplexes. Um, since you are planning to live in this, we need to be sure there's a path for you to move into the property within 60 days. So we got to make sure that there's at least one of the leases on month to month, a unit is vacant. If it's both occupied and they both have leases that are on 12-month leases, that one of those ends within 60 days of closing. So that's one consideration too, is there has to be a way for you to move in there. And it has to be a lease that's written so then the underwriting team can actually see, yes, there is a way that you can move in there when it comes to looking at your loan and reviewing everything. So one small consideration there. Um, when it comes to duplex types, I would say the typical one that you see here is going to be that top bottom. So you may have one main door, you may have two separate doors, one for each unit. All of them have a back stairwell, so you have a side door typically off the driveway. That back door is going to be a common staircase going all the way up to the top unit, the middle, the lower unit, and the basement. We do occasionally get some side by sides as well here too. I know like Greenfield, Greendale is kind of where we see that a lot in Waukesha County. Those are going to be typically be newer constructions, and so um, those are kind of around like the $400,000 to $500,000 price point is where I see the side by side start to pop up. But just some considerations there too. If a certain building type or location is something you're after, and Ty and I help clients with this all day, every day. It's how I got my start in real estate, and so if you have questions about locations, types, we can always hop on a call and kind of dive deeper into all that with you too.
Yeah. Any other rule of thumbs that you'd like to share here in our House Hack 101 of just like you could almost just blindly follow these rule of thumbs and be successful?
I think a lot of house hackers I work with too, they have a dream of the first one they buy, they want it to be a project home. They want it to be something where they can move in, they can do a lot of updates to the place. And I would say if it's your first one, don't do it on expert mode. Um, do things on easy mode or maybe
Yeah.
medium mode. And each person's different based on their skill set and what they have. Rehabs are expensive. And so if you're looking at something that's going to be like a live-in flip that's a duplex, make sure you have the means to update those. I generally see properties that are duplexes. Most of them have been rental properties for the last 20 plus years. And so they've been treated kind of like rental properties where it's hard to find the properties that just need floors and paint. Generally, if it's a interior that's rough, it's because everything else in the property is rough, including like exterior, basement, mechanicals. And so it's hard to find those hidden gems of, oh, the plumbing's updated, the electrical's updated, and it's a new roof and new siding, but the insides aren't nice. Like that's kind of, if anything, it's the opposite. The insides are nice and everything else has kind of been distressed. So really think about if that's important to you. And I almost think you're better off buying something that's of a project and more of just getting your foot in the door, doing it, trying it versus doing it on expert mode.
Mhm.
Um, and I
Yeah,
think
the
that's just
second one you can do in expert mode for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The other rule of thumb I have is you start like looking at properties online together and doing deal analysis is if there's at least one 3 bedroom unit of the 2 units, that's almost always going to be a better spreadsheet performer. So like if you've got a 2 bedroom, 1 bath, you almost don't even need to analyze it if you're looking at 25 properties and some of them are 2 bed, 1 bath, or sorry, 2 bed, 1 bed combos versus like a 3 bed, 2 bed combo. You're always going to see that like the rent to like what you're paying for it is going to be significantly better for the bigger the duplex it is. And because of that rule I just mentioned a little bit ago about how after you move out, after you've rented the property out, it kind of wipes out the debt impact and your ability to afford another property. Usually you're going to see better rents on those properties and it's also a bigger base. So another rule of thumb is like if usually people are like budget conscious like how little can I spend on my single family home to keep my mortgage down, in house hacking it's a little bit more interesting where as long as your tenants are buying this property for you in the future, you should actually buy more property, a bigger property, a nicer property, because it means less money out of your pocket because you factor in repairs and maintenance into your financing and your ability to buy the property. So like the bigger the property, actually usually the better your performance is going to be, specifically because you've got bigger units that can procure bigger rents as well. That's another rule of thumb that I found. And I definitely have like one other bit of advice for when you start down that like analysis journey of analyzing duplexes. But do you have any other more rule of thumbs or
No,
initial advice pieces? So,
no,
okay. My other advice is kind of like where you said you wish that you had analyzed more deals. Whether you're a house hack investor or a normal investor, I think the best thing you can do is a lot of times people are spreadsheet warriors. That's definitely the persona that comes into house hacking and investing. And what I find is like perfect is the enemy of like good. Obviously, everybody wants to get the very best deal that sold in that entire calendar year, but it's just not realistic. Not every single person can buy the best deal. I say that the best thing is to like try to buy the top 10% of all deals that you've seen come up in the last 3 to 6 months. And what that means is repetition. Everything else that we do in life, whether it's going to the gym or learning a sport or playing video games, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So I think the goal for every house hacker should be to analyze 25 deals over a month or two and just like keep record of those. Create different tabs on your spreadsheet. Okay, what were the best of those 25? What were the best 2 to 3? What was my out of pocket going to be while I lived there? What was the after I move out cash flow going to be? What was the best 2 to 3? And now when I see that in the future come up and it matches on the spreadsheet, don't be afraid to pull the trigger. It's really hard for Nick and I or your agent to be the one that says, this is a good deal, buy this. Like it puts us in a tough position.
yeah,
But if you have this like track record of like, no, I've analyzed 25 deals, you are going to be very confident that like it maybe not be the best one I saw and I wish I'd bought it 2 months ago, but I just wasn't ready yet. You just know that you're at the top percentile of good deals that the market is providing today versus listening to a Bigger Pockets episode from 2015 where they're saying they were being paid $500 to live there. It's just not possible today.
yeah, that, and then coupled with going and seeing properties. I think
Yes.
too, you never, and this is just a home buying tip in general, you never want that perfect home to be the first home that you go and see because you're not going to feel ready. You're not going to feel like you have a good sense of what the market looks like, what kind of offer it takes potentially to get the offer accepted. The more that you can go and see properties, we kind of say like between 4 to 6 is the magic number. And everyone moves differently, but if you can see 4 to 6 properties, it's then going to give you a way better mental muscle of when something hits the market, you're doing some underwriting, running numbers, you have a good sense of what this is going to look like in person too. And that I think coupled with running numbers is the two biggest things that you can do. So when it does come up, you know when to strike, when not to strike. You also don't get that feeling of FOMO because you've gone and seen enough. You know how price point reflects condition and location and all those sorts of things. And that's the one biggest piece of advice I would say for a home buyer, a house hacker is go and see homes, go and tour duplexes with your realtor. Because if you don't, you're going to have that feeling of I moved too quick and I
Yeah.
didn't see enough.
And that's not the it's 4 to 6 and now I've bought one. That's the education tours of just building your compare and contrast. Like the typical client we have probably sees closer to 10 properties, but you just get more dialed in once you get to showing
Yep.
number 5 and beyond. And you're looking at ones that you've already ran the spreadsheet. You've probably analyzed the 25 deals. You've seen the 5 different properties, and you can now know like, oh, my spreadsheet checks. I like this location. Let's see if this is a good fit for me to live in, and you're just more likely to succeed once you've checked off those boxes. So yeah,
Yep.
that's your execution plan, is learn how to buy a home generally, know what the house hacking rule of thumbs are and how to analyze a deal, and go see enough of them to know that's
Yep.
going to be the fit. Like it's a very simple way to essentially get started, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily easy, because a lot of that actually comes down into like we can help you get there faster, but we learned all these things one from doing it, but before we did it we probably listened to 100 hours worth of like being excited about this topic of investing and knowing that the vehicle we were going to take to do it was going to be house hacking.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think we've at least wrapped up 101. Obviously, we could just keep on going and turn this into a 201 episode, but honestly, like the 201, we can get more strategic. But if you want to dive into the house hacking strategy, that's where you just need to reach out to us and set up some time to talk about your goals specifically, because everybody's circumstances are different. Do I want to do one and done? Do I want to do multiple? It gets so nuanced that really that 201 starts getting into a your specific situation.
Yep.
So, with that, that's House Hacking 101. We'll be back again here in a couple of weeks with your Milwaukee real estate market updates and probably some more tips on how to do everything that you have to do in real estate.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.